people are not a slogan. We are a covenant. The Constitution is not a talisman to be waved when convenient and ignored when inconvenient. It is the map we promise to follow, a promise that binds us to one another across time, across difference, across the messy business of democracy. Today, that promise is being tested by a movement that treats loyalty to a single man as a substitute for loyalty to the Republic. This is not politics as usual. This is a cult of personality that corrodes the very foundations the founders wrote down so we could live free of kings, of unchecked power, and of permanent grievance. Call it what it is, a cult. Not every supporter, not every voter, but a political culture that elevates obedience over judgment, spectacle over substance, and grievance over governance. A cult demands fealty, rewrites facts to fit faith, and punishes dissent as betrayal. When political identity becomes religious identity, the public square becomes a pulpit for dogma rather than a forum for debate. This matters because the Republic depends on citizens who can disagree without demonizing, who can accept loss without delegitimizing the system, and who can hold leaders accountable without descending into vendetta. When the leader is treated as infallible, the Constitution's checks and balances become optional suggestions. That is how democracies die, not always with a bang, but with a slow erosion of norms that once seemed unassailable. There is a moral arithmetic to public life. Actions have consequences. Lies, cruelty, and the deliberate shredding of institutions do not evaporate because they are convenient. Karma, call it consequence, accountability, or history's ledger, arrives in many forms: legal, electoral, reputational, and moral. Sometimes it is harsh, sometimes it is restorative, and sometimes it is both. If we believe in justice, then we must accept that accountability is not vengeance. It is the mechanism by which a society heals. If we confuse getting even with justice, we become the very thing we claim to oppose. If we celebrate cruelty as payback, we teach the next generation that might makes right. That is not the American way. The Constitution does not promise revenge. It promises remedy through law, through institutions, and through the slow, stubborn work of civic repair. The leader must represent all Americans. The president is not a tribal chieftain. The office is not a megaphone for a faction. The leader of this nation must be a steward of all citizens, the ones who voted for them and the ones who did not. The oath of office is not a private pledge to a base. It is a public covenant to the Constitution and to every person under its protection. Representation means restraint. It means using power to protect the vulnerable, to uphold the rule of law, and to model the decency we expect from one another. When a leader stokes division, weaponizes institutions, or treats opponents as enemies rather than fellow citizens, they betray that oath. That betrayal is not abstract. It has consequences for policy, for courts, for civil liberties, and for the soul of the nation. Christianity and hypocrisy. There is a particular cruelty in invoking faith while violating its core teachings. To call oneself a Christian and then to celebrate cruelty, to excuse dishonesty, or to treat the stranger as less than human is not piety. It is hypocrisy. The Gospels call for mercy, humility, and the care for the least among us. When political leaders cloak vindictiveness in religious language, they pervert both religion and politics. Faith should be a check on power, not a shield for it. If Christianity is used to justify exclusion, retribution, or the consolidation of power, then it has been turned into something unrecognizable. The moral authority of religion is squandered when it becomes a prop for political theater. Skipping toward fascism. Words matter. So do patterns. When institutions are hollowed out, when dissent is criminalized, when the press is delegitimized, and when one party treats elections as mere exercises in power, rather than the peaceful transfer of authority, we are not merely witnessing partisan excess. We are watching the architecture of authoritarianism take shape. Fascism does not always arrive with jackboots. It arrives through the normalization of emergency, the erosion of norms, the concentration of power, and the cultivation of a permanent enemy. It arrives when citizens stop believing that the rule of law applies to everyone. The long-term effects are generational. Weakened institutions, emboldened demagogues, and a civic culture that forgets how to disagree without destroying. The rule of law is for everyone. The Constitution's genius is its insistence that no one is above the law, that principles is not rhetorical flourish. It is the guardrail that keeps us from becoming a monarchy, an oligarchy, or a tyranny. No kings, no crowns, no cults. The rule of law must be blind, impartial, and relentless. When exceptions are made for the powerful, when prosecutions are framed as persecution, when pardons are used as rewards for loyalty rather than instruments of mercy, then the rule of law becomes a tool of the powerful. That is the opposite of justice. It is the opposite of what our ancestors fought for and what immigrants still risk everything to find. America as a beacon for immigrants. Our story is not one of purity. It is one of promise. People came here because America offered a chance to be more than where they were born. That promise, the promise of opportunity, of safety, of a fair shake, that is what made America exceptional. To forget that is to betray the very idea that made people want to come here in the first place. If we close our doors, if we make cruelty policy, if we treat newcomers as threats rather than contributors, we will not only dishonor our past, we will impoverish our future. The nation that once welcomed the tired, the poor, and the huddled masses must remember that its strength comes from its openness, not its walls. Complacency is enabling. Silence is a choice. Complacency is complicity. When decent people shrug and say, this is politics, well, they hand the keys to those who would burn the house down. Democracy requires courage. The courage to speak, to vote, to organize, to teach, and to refuse normalization of the abnormal. We are not powerless. We are a people with ballots, with juries, with civic institutions, and with the ability to hold leaders accountable. But those tools only work if we use them. If we allow fear or fatigue to keep us from acting, we will be the generation that let the Republic slip. A constitutional motif for renewal. Return to the text. Read the preamble. Remember the amendments. The Constitution is not a relic. It is a living document that asks us to be better than our worst impulses. It asks us to balance liberty with responsibility, to protect minority rights, and to ensure that power is checked. We, the people, must reclaim that phrase, not as a chant, but as a practice. We must insist that leaders be servants, not sovereigns. We must insist that the law be equal, that the press be free, and that the ballot be sacred. This is a call to action. This is not a moment for half measures. It is a moment for citizens to stand up and be counted. Vote. Organize. Teach your children the difference between patriotism and partisanship. Support institutions that hold power accountable. Refuse to accept cruelty as policy or spectacle as truth. Karma will come, sometimes as consequence, sometimes as correction. We can let it be a bitch that devours us, or we can make it a blessing that restores us. The choice is ours. Wake up. Act. Reclaim the Republic. The Constitution gave us the tools. Use them. Do not let complacency be the hand that hands our children a diminished country. We are not a nation built on aggression, on revenge, or on the worship of a single person. We are a nation built on the idea that power must be limited, that dignity is universal, and that the rule of law binds us all. If we fail now, the recovery will take generations. If we act now, we can be the generation that remembered who we were and chose to be better. Let's go, America. Get ready. It's America, and I'm an American. We are Americans.